Hello there, floralpreneurs. Can you hear me? Let me check over in my group. It looks like maybe I'm there. Let's see. I see some people tuning in. Hey, Julie. Hopefully you can hear me and see me. So today is a big topic. Today's a big important chat, I think. And I'm not going to say I haven't talked about any of this yet, because I have certainly covered some of these topics in the past couple of months now. But today, what I really want to talk about is the concept of the real tough stuff we're dealing with right now: cancellations, refund requests, postponements, and the thing that is the most shocking, though should not be, unreasonable client reactions. Now, I am very pro client. I am all about the client, taking care of the client, thinking about the client. But what's interesting right now is what is happening from the client's point of view, how they're actually handling the situation when they're hearing your policies. Some of your policies are very reasonable and they are being met with an unreasonable response. So that's really what I want to talk today about, because it shouldn't be surprising. And so in a lot of ways, it's really, really not. But it's one thing to have a client push back when you're like, no refunds. It's another thing to have a client push back when you're actually trying to work with them. And that's what I am seeing happening out there is florists are trying to be reasonable. They're not even like drawing a line in the sand, and they're getting tremendous pushback. Some of you have gotten bad reviews. Some of you have gotten, one florist was telling us in the group that she had like an onslaught of the people in this bride's life, her friends, her family, all these negative reviews. I mean, that's like a really extreme reaction to someone who actually did offer a remedy, didn't just say, hey, no refunds, said, hey, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, like laid out some options, and she's getting assaulted online, right? So, one florist came in last week and mentioned a situation where she's like banned maybe from a venue because she wouldn't refund a deposit. So I think it's really, really important. And again, she was not just saying, no, I won't refund a deposit. She was like, I have 3 out of your 4 dates available. I will give you that value in rental items for your day, even though you picked the 1 day out of 4 that I'm not available. Okay. So I think it's really, really important to just recognize that despite your best efforts, you might just be in a situation where you have a hassle with a customer, okay? So that's what I want to talk about today, is that you're doing your best and you might still get some pushback. And what are we going to do about that? How are you going to handle it? And I'm not going to pretend I'm going to have all the answers, but I do have a couple of super duper important things that you must keep in mind, I think, as you move forward. I just want to check in. How's the quality of the broadcast over there? I'm seeing like weird, it looks like it's flashing over here. And I can always start a new broadcast if I had to, but it'll end up having a new link and all that kind of stuff. So I'd rather not do that if I don't have to. But if you guys are seeing me and hearing me, then we're good. So again, what I want to really focus on is the struggle. The struggle is real of cancellations, postponements, and all of that. So first of all, if you are mostly, somebody says, everything good on my end. Okay, good. It's fine here. Excellent, excellent. So if you're experiencing postponements, which I know you are, okay, I think personally that the very best policy is to just do our very best to accommodate our clients. If we have to bring in a freelancer, if we have to like hire an additional staff, whatever it is, if we're going to have, a couple of really way overbooked weekends that we did not want to do, especially we can shoot our clients straight. Like, hey, you know what? I'm actually already booked that day, but I'll do whatever it takes if that's what you want to do. They are appreciating that tremendously. I'm finding that when I say to somebody, I'm actually booked that day, but I could do your wedding too, Or like there's this one date that I have a big wedding and I'd really rather not do another event. But my bride was choosing between November 2020 and this date that I don't really want to book another wedding in 2021. And I told her to pick the 2021 date unless she only wants to have 50 people at her wedding, because that's basically the choice she's making. And she was unbelievably appreciative of my honesty and the fact that I'm going to work with her on a day that I'm not really thrilled to have to do another wedding. But now I know moving forward, anybody else who wants that date, I can confidently and kindly say, I absolutely cannot take anything more, right? And my client for 2020, who's getting married on this new date in 2021, well, she knows that I am not going to be there on her wedding day. I didn't actually say those words to her yet, but when I do, she will not be surprised, right? Because I already told her that's a date that I didn't just say have another event, have a big event, right? But I'll do whatever it takes to make it work for you. So she'll appreciate that I'm not there, and just that she got her flowers at all and that I didn't give her a hassle is all that she's going to remember, hopefully, right? About how our interaction went. So anyway, that's it. That's where we're at. We got to do our best with the postponements. Cancellations now I get are a little bit differently. So I want to talk a little bit about this idea of canceling and the idea of refunds, okay? Because this is where the rubber hits the road. And I know, there are a bunch of comments that came in yesterday. Last week, like, hey, somebody said, but I thought we weren't supposed to refund anybody, because if we refund one, then that means like all of our contracts we have to refund. I just want to disabuse you of this concept. Okay, this is not correct. It is not correct. You should check with your own lawyer, okay? Because again, I am not a lawyer. However, just commonsensically, it does not make sense that you would not be allowed to amend any one of your contracts, because it would then mean that all of your other contracts are null and void, right? Like if you just think about it just for a minute, if I refund someone because their father died 3 weeks before the wedding and she's not in a headspace to get married, does that mean I have to refund every single customer for any reason whatsoever? No. I have a contract with this customer for this agreement, and I modified this agreement. Modifying this agreement doesn't modify all your agreements, okay? So it's important for you to know that, okay? And it's important for you to think that way, because if you are limited by the belief that if you refund one, you must refund all. If you refund one, you're vulnerable. If you refund one, if you make any exception at all, right, you are vulnerable. It's going to leave you in a place where you're only operating from fear and you're not operating from your heart or your brain, okay? So we want to get the heart and brain aligned as much as possible. They will not be, by the way, in many of the cases, they will not be aligned, because your head is going to say, I can't refund this money. I have a contract. But then there might be part of your heart that says, but I didn't earn this money. And you're going to have to reconcile that, right? You're going to have to reconcile that. So let's just get down to it. So somebody asked me last week, why even have a contract if you're going to amend it? Why does a contract exist? So let's start here, because it's the perfect question. I think there are some florists who think that the contract exists to guarantee you income. So you can just check with yourself. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you think that. I want you to just think with yourself. Do you think that's what your contract is for? Because again, let me enlighten you. That is not what it is for. When a couple signs a contract with you, or a party, one member of the party signs a contract with you, the intention is not to guarantee you income. Maybe on our end, right, it feels like that, like, oh, well, I can plan on making this much money that weekend. But that's not why the contract exists. So let's just super easy peasy. We got a little Wikipedia, okay? I got 2 quick little definitions just simply by Googling, why does a contract exist? So a contract, what is it? It's a legally binding agreement. Now, this can be oral or written, by the way. It doesn't have to be written for it to be a contract. It recognizes and governs the rights and duties of the parties to the agreement. So again, duties of the agreement, things that you must do. A contract is legally enforceable because it meets the requirement and approval of the law. An agreement typically involves the exchange of goods, services, money, or promises of any of those. Here's another definition. A contract is a legally enforceable agreement between two or more parties. It may be oral or written. A contract is essentially a set of promises. Typically, each party promises to do something for the other in exchange for a benefit. So I just want you to think about that last piece, in exchange for a benefit. So if you have taken someone's money in exchange for flowers, and you are not going to be delivering those flowers, right? You have to think about what your contract actually says. So a lot of people are out there telling you, stick to your contract. Again, they have not read your contract. So if anybody's telling you to stick to your contract who hasn't read your contract, do they know what they are talking about? Maybe, maybe not, right? Because they don't know if your contract says anything that actually protects you. So let's talk about that a little bit. So first, little quote from, we had a lawyer in our group. She doesn't chime in all that often, but when she does, it's always worth listening to, I think. And just I quoted what she said. So she goes, I think some people, inexperienced or just totally at a loss about contracts, and let's just be honest with ourselves, you're a floral designer, right? You're not like a contract expert. So that's okay. It's okay to be like, I'm not a contract expert. That's okay. You have permission to not be the end all and be all of contracts. All right. So she's saying either because you're inexperienced or at a total loss about contracts and legal matters, that you might not realize that a contract can be amended if both parties agree. You can amend your contracts to accommodate these unforeseen, this is the thing that I want you to really focus in on, remarkable situations pretty much no one saw coming when they originally wrote the contract. Negotiate with your clients where you wish, where possible, to reach a new agreement about what to do regarding postponements, deposits, retainers, cancellations, and all the challenging stuff. She goes, you can be just as creative and collaborative with your clients regarding altering contract terms to fit the times as you are doing your design work and taking care of your clients in the happier floral area of your business. So that is an amen moment for me. When she wrote this last week, I said, this is really, really valuable to just lay it out there. If you're postponing, you're amending a contract. So this idea, again, just to go back to like, you can't refund because then you have to refund everybody. Well, if you postpone, by that same logic, if you postpone one wedding, you must postpone all, right? If you allow one to cancel, you must allow all. So again, just notice the absurdity of that, right? The absolute and utter absurdity of the idea that if you change one contract, they're all null and void, okay? So just peace and love, peace and love. Make sure that you are consulting a lawyer if you really do not know what your contract says or what it protects you from, okay? Make sure that you are not coming at hiding behind your contract thinking it says something that it probably doesn't say. Because let's get down to force majeure for a second. So force majeure should be in your contract. It was not in my contract for many, 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 many years. Many, many years. I did not have anything that looked like force majeure, okay? So force majeure is like, what if something totally unforeseen happens and I cannot fulfill the contract? That's force majeure. Acts of God, right, is often how we look at this. So someone asked about, well, what about like force majeure? Doesn't that like protect you? Again, it's going to depend what your contract says. Because while you may have force majeure, while I may have force majeure, what you may find is that it doesn't define specifically what happens to the deposit. Now, you may say it's non-refundable, right? You may define it as that. But again, may not actually say, in the case of your venue is not allowed to host more than 50 people. Your venue is closed because of government mandates. Like, just be super genuine with yourself. Again, this like heart and brain coming together. Is your customer canceling, or do they have no choice but to cancel? Is canceling the safe thing to do, the smart thing to do, the righteous thing to do? Even like you're like, oh, well, they're canceling in October now. Okay, well, maybe because they're trying to just like read the writing on the wall, right? So just keep in mind, your cancellation policy is for customers who just plain old decide, let's call the whole thing off, right? It's not necessarily going to protect you from, you're not even allowed to legally do a wedding in your state on their date, okay? So don't hide behind contracts that don't actually protect you. That's, if there is literally one thing to walk away from today with, it is, please do not try to hide behind policies and terms that you don't even have in your contract, okay? So this was just like a little note I had jotted down, like, so force majeure. So force majeure, an act of God. Let's just say a bridge washes out on the way, you're on your way to the venue, a bridge is washed out. You literally cannot cross the bridge, okay? So you can't get to the wedding on time. So that's force majeure, right? You have your car full of flowers, you did every single thing, you made all the flowers, you are there, you are right there. You can even see the venue, but you cannot physically cross the bridge, right? Bridge is washed out, you can't get there. There's no alternate route. Let's just say there is an alternate route, but it's gonna take you 4 hours to go around. You're not gonna make it on time. You're missing this wedding, no matter how you slice it, right? So that's force majeure, you cannot pass. So just using this as an example, again, I'm not telling you I have the answer here, but just thinking. So now what happens, right? Do you keep 100% of that money? Would you make your full profit and the client doesn't get anything, or they get their flowers like 3 hours after their wedding is over? Or would you decide to do something else that's fair? I'm not coming at you with an answer, so don't wait for it. This is for you to know, because your contract probably doesn't tell you. Your contract most likely doesn't say, in the case of force majeure, if I have my car full of flowers and I can't cross a bridge, I will not refund anything, or I will refund you for my labor, or I will refund you for whatever, right? There is probably, I would almost bet my house that you don't have that defined in your contract, right? So on the other hand, you've got COVID-19. So that means no weddings over 50 people, most likely for 2020, right? So if they decide to postpone to 21, what does your contract say about that, right? Again, most likely it doesn't address it. So it could be force majeure because weddings can't happen. It can't happen. And so we are canceling this contract. And then what? Okay. So like, again, literally, what does your contract say will happen to your non-refundable deposit, the retainer, in the case of force majeure? It really may say nothing at all. Okay. So do not take the approach that contract's a contract, why even have a contract, just straight up policies, non-refundable. It says non-refundable. If you don't have these things defined, you are most likely vulnerable to someone who may want to act unreasonable with you, okay? They may not even think they're being unreasonable, by the way. They may think like, look, I paid you money and this isn't my fault. And I know it isn't your fault either, but that's my money, right? And I think you would be absolutely lying to yourself if you said that you don't understand that if you had paid a deposit right now for something that got canceled and you know way in advance now that you can't do it, that you wouldn't at least hope for your money back, right? Or a portion of it back. Why would you not at least hope for that? Why would you not? Why would you just be like, you know what though? I signed that contract and it said non-refundable. And so even though this is not my fault and I'm not technically canceling and there's no way for any events to happen, yeah, it's, they should keep my money, right? Maybe you would think that, but maybe you wouldn't. All right, I see a comment come through here. Contracts are written up with each individual client in mind. Not all my contracts are the same for everyone. I adjust, add, and remove clauses based on the needs of myself and that specific client for their event/wedding date. Yeah, that's good. All right. So another question that was asked of me in a somewhat challenging way, frankly, how can you financially afford to give back deposits? Okay. So here's the thing. There was also a term thrown out in the group, like people who are refund happy. I just want to take serious issue with that idea. There is no one who is refund happy. Okay. There is no one right now in the wedding industry who is happy at all, frankly, but let alone happy to be giving refunds. Doing the right thing doesn't mean you're happy about it. Okay. We can do the right thing and not be happy about it. But again, this idea of how can you afford to give back a deposit? Living off deposits is, I understand, the way that a lot of people run their business. You're not alone if you run your business that way. However, it's not really correct money cash flow management. And moving forward, I think a lot of people are going to understand that to their core right now, because you're freaking out because you spent that money already and you don't know what to do. And so you're especially on edge about this idea of refunding. You have to dig into this idea that your contract protects you, even though, like I just covered, it might not, right? So how can you afford to give back deposits? You should always have that deposit money. Now, a lot of people put it into a separate account. Some people even put it into an interest accruing account. The bottom line is, if something happens to you where it's crazy at this point to be like, well, I'm not going to be the one who gets sick. Like, I'm not going to get COVID-19. So it's just my clients who are canceling. Okay. Just recognize you're a human being, right? You're a human being, and things happen to human beings sometimes. Sometimes somebody breaks a leg or hurts themselves, right? Sometimes someone is diagnosed with an illness unexpectedly. It doesn't even have to be COVID-19. It could be something else. If you're unable to fulfill your contract, you're not able to provide the services, but you collected the money, you owe that money back, right? So if for no other reason you want to keep your deposits available so that if God forbid something happens to you, your business can refund the money, because otherwise it's not the right thing, right? It's not the right thing for you to take deposits and spend them and then be ill and unable to work and unable to fulfill the contract and also be unable to refund their money. So I'm not saying this. I know what really triggered me to make this our topic is this idea of people have used the word shame. Well, people are shaming into refunding, and that is not a thing. Okay. I don't think people should feel shame if you are not refunding because you feel like your policies are what they are. You have your own reasons, right? Some people, everyone's going to run their business in a different way. There's a sock company, Darn Tough. They make great socks. They're expensive socks. They really are. I swear, I think the last pair I bought was like $22 or something crazy. But here's the thing. They're great socks. They're high quality socks, and they guarantee them for life. So 5 years from now, if I get a hole in this sock, if I wanted to, I can send them back to the company and they're going to give me a brand new pair of socks. I know people, as a matter of fact, who do that, who always send back their socks to the Darn Tough after however long, many, many years of using them, because of the lifetime guarantee. Now, I don't interact that way, right? I'm like, I got my value from these socks. If they last me 5 years, right? If I love these socks, I got my value. I don't feel the need to be like 5 years later, right? But that's their policy. And so they'll allow you to do that. Does that mean that other sock companies are the pits, are the worst, and they should be shamed that they're not guaranteeing their socks for life? Of course not, right? Of course not. Everybody has to have their own business practice. So if someone is in the position where they have the cash flow, where they have the deposits, where their brain and their heart line up and say, I'm giving a refund or a partial refund, or I'm going to forward everything to 2021 and I'm not charging extra, whatever, that's their business and you can run your business. But I do want to, again, just remind you, if your head and your heart are not lining up, if someone's saying, well, I'm going to refund and that makes you feel bad, then you have something going on inside you that you need to deal with about your business policy. That's the bottom line, because I don't think it's possible for someone to make you feel shame that you don't already feel for some reason inside yourself. Okay. So I'm not here to tell you what I'm going to do because you have to do what I'm going to do. The reason to bring you here is to make sure that you don't feel bad about what you do moving forward, because you're doing it deliberately with intention, with integrity, and also more than anything, legally protecting yourself as much as possible. Because again, I would bet you almost anything that your contract does not define what happens if you have to cancel because no events are allowed to happen in your state. Okay. So there's that. So let's get to it. I got a whole bunch of questions. Let's see. I've got some things coming through here. No one asked for a refund, but I've decided that deposits will be held until the job is done in the future. Yeah, that's great. It's not always easy, right? And look, I've had my business for 18 years. I've never experienced something like this. You could be in business for 35 years. You've never experienced this. Unless you have literally been in business for over 100 years, you have not experienced a pandemic in your business, right? We are going through one of the hardest things that we will ever go through. And something to really recognize is we may go through this again. We may go through it again next year. We may go through it again 5 years from now, 10 years from now, maybe a different disease, right? So we got to buckle up and get smart. We got to learn some lessons right now. So if you learn that lesson, no one asked for a refund, going to keep them in the future. You are winning at life right now. Just, you are winning at life. All right. I may not seem like I need a sip of coffee, but I do. So here are the questions that I got. So I invited people to send questions anonymously because I know some of this stuff is really, really hard. Okay, for example, last week, the venue situation. So a florist wrote in and she said, this venue that I work with all the time banned me, even though I offered them multiple dates that I was available, offered rentals. She was trying to work with them, right? But it's the venue owner's child getting married and they wanted a refund. And she said no. She did, again, offer other remedies. So it's not like she wasn't trying, right? She's trying to work with them. And she's being met with you're dead to me sort of reply, right? Well, you'll never work in this town again, honey, right? That's an extreme reaction. Now, again, this is why we want to take things case by case. And I'm not saying this to shame anybody or be like, I'm so right about things. But here's the story. If a venue that I work with often and sends me business regularly for years is having to change a date, is not able to work with me anymore, and is asking for a deposit back, I got to think about this particular person. What is the relationship, right? Why would I give it back? Why would I not, right? So if you don't have the money, you can't give it back. And I'm not saying this is that person's situation. I don't know what her situation is. I feel like she was actually trying to be reasonable with her customer, by the way. However, if it's me, my gut instinct, my knee jerk is give that money back to the venue. Let's keep that relationship, right? That $1,500 deposit is not necessarily worth losing all the other future business, right? Now, is that fair? Is it right? Not necessarily, right? But if you have to sort of weigh your options on every single client. So that's why when people are saying, do you have a template on this? No, I do not. I will not pretend to have a template, and I do not recommend that you even consider a template for this situation. Every single client should be taken on a case-by-case basis, because if you think that way, it gives you freedom, it gives you flexibility, and allows you to be as creative with your solutions for your clients as you are with your floral design. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that like, if you have the freedom to not feel like I have to operate out of fear where I have to just say no, because if I say yes, well, all my other contracts are out the window. That's not the case. And if you're not sure if that's the case, what are we going to do? Call your lawyer. And if you don't have a lawyer, now's your time, honey child. Now is your time, okay? Because you should not be navigating this sitting back on your heels, like, I'm hiding behind my contract, because it may work for a while. And hey, maybe you'll be lucky and nobody asks you for a refund, right? That could be your life. It could be your life. But you could also be in a situation where you're trying to act reasonably, and then someone's like literally assaulting you online with a bazillion reviews all saying how unreasonable you are, when actually you did try to come to a remedy. Some people are just straight up gonna flip out. They're gonna just flip out, because why shouldn't they, right? They've been trapped in their house for 8 weeks. They just found out that they can't have the wedding that they've been holding on for weeks, praying that they can have, right? They spent 12 or 15 or 18 months planning this thing. They finally like just picked up their dress, right? Like they've got everything, they're ready, and now they can't. It's emotional. It's really, really emotional. So let's see. Let's get to the questions. All right, I see one coming in here. Is there additional contract information in your Patreon group? You know, Patreon is really more about booking and marketing, like attracting great clients. So I don't do a ton on contracts in there. If there's a specific question, I would answer that. But I really think at this point, I mean, I share my contract template. You can always get my contract on my website at realflowerbusiness.com. And somebody asked me, like, is it all legalese? What it is all of the clauses in my contract spelled out for you with explanations of like why it's in there, why you want to have it in there. So it is both. It is plain old English of me explaining to you the whys and the whats. And it is also the actual, just the terms, so that you can pull whatever you want and create your own template out of that, which, by the way, you would then take to a lawyer, okay? So, and it says that right in my contract, you have to have a contract that you get as a template vetted by your local attorney, okay? Because they may say, oh, you know what, in our state, you want to add this, or in our state, you're not allowed to do that, right? So you want to just keep all those things in mind, that you don't want to just take a template and just use it from anybody, right? Even if they're a lawyer. Because what they're always going to say is, I'm not your lawyer, right? So they're not going to represent you or help you if their contract gets you in trouble. And neither am I, because I'm not a lawyer. So, all right, questions. So here are some of the anonymous questions that came through. And I really appreciate everybody who took a minute to say, hey, listen, I've got something and I need your help with it. So I appreciate you. Okay, so first things first. What happens if we are allowed gatherings of, say, 50 people, but the original contract is for 200 guests? My contract has a no reduction/minimum clause. Would you enforce this or just let them scale everything back? Okay, so great question. And again, I think it's got to be on the case by case. And here's why. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but I have a customer who is getting married in New York. So it's enough of a drive for me that, you know, if she's only going to have a 50-person wedding, unless she's going to meet my minimum, it's really just too big of an ask, too big of travel for me to do all of that for a really small event. So you have to decide, are you willing to reduce, or do you want to release them from your contract? Because in my particular situation, like if I'm saying I'm not willing to do it, it's not that it's impossible. It's that I'm not willing, okay? Because that's the other thing. Your contract, your force majeure, right? It's got to be like, this can't happen. We tried our best. If I'm not trying my best, I'm just unwilling, right? Then maybe the right thing is that I let her out of the contract and refund a deposit or at least partial deposit for any time that, I can keep some money for my time perhaps. But it also depends how much time you invested. This particular customer, I have invested little to no time. I booked her and that was it. We haven't talked about anything since. So, that's something to keep in mind there. Like, really, what have you given? What have they gotten? What service have they gotten in exchange for that deposit so far? So I personally think that people should be allowed to reduce. I don't think it's reasonable to say, well, you have to spend $5,000 or $8,000 on your 50-person wedding when our contract was for 200 guests. To me, that's not really putting your best foot forward, right? To me, that comes into, and again, the intention of that clause, your reduction clause. I don't have a reduction clause, but I have a minimum on every single invoice. This is your requested minimum. The reason is because if I'm going to give you my Saturday, and it's really my Wednesday through Saturday, right? If I'm going to give you my Wednesday through Saturday on this day for this many flowers, I need at least this much money. That's the closest thing to the guaranteed income that you get, right? That minimum is the closest you get to really knowing what you're going to get paid for the year. Like when you add up all of your weddings, like all those minimums, you're like, that's the least amount of money I'm going to make. And if they add on to that, I'll make more money, right? This year, that's just not going to be the case. If they need to reduce and you're not willing to reduce, I don't think that's quite right. Now, you don't necessarily have to like do whatever they want. Like I said, I'm not going to necessarily go really, really far for a really, really small thing, but I should at least be willing to meet them partway on it. Like, well, maybe I can't reduce the $5,000 minimum to $1,000, but could we meet in the middle, maybe $3,000? Like maybe we can, work with that as a budget. You have to decide what's right for your business. You have to act in your business's best interest. So just to go back to our like, the venue owner who wants their deposit back, just because it's such a good example. If you're acting in your best interest, maybe refunding that money is in your best interest because you're just shutting people up and keeping them happy, right? That just might be what's in your best interest. And that's why each person should be individual. So anyway, yes, I would let people scale way back to answer your question. In my market, she goes on to say, I asked like some things that are like other questions or struggles. So she says, in my market, I'm watching local growers who used to supply me turn to underpriced retail home delivery. Their business is booming right now, and consequently, they can't supply me with flowers. Arg. I'm happy for their success, but can't help but wonder where all these customers for home delivery have been all these years. I'm struggling with feelings of resentment there, and as not being able to source flowers for orders that I do have. All right, so that's just legit, right? We can feel you on that. I think at this point, I don't think of growers as being underpriced. They may just have a more competitive price because they sell at a lower price point. So just keep that in mind, right? Like the difference between underpricing means you're losing money because you're not pricing with the industry standard. But if you are providing your best price to the customer and it happens to be less than our price as a retail florist, I have trouble calling that underpricing. I think that they just have a different structure, different amount of money that they're looking for. And yes, if their business is booming, you should be happy for them. And maybe all these home delivery people have been hiding all these years. But the truth is, I think they haven't. I think that this is it's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me, right? Like everyone is feeling differently about what they value, about what they're missing, about what brings value to their life and to their home. So this just may be a time where people are really feeling that value of flowers, and we should be really thankful for that and hope that it keeps going on. But I think you're allowed to feel some feelings of resentment there. I think you're allowed, I hope they pass quickly, because resentment turns into like a little stew of anger, right? And we want our brains and our hearts aligned with goodness right now, because we have a long slog ahead of us. So we can't get bogged down right now. Let's be happy for them. Maybe there's a way to help them, right? It's so crazy, but it's like the thing that you're feeling resentment about, how can you maybe be a part of bolstering it? I don't know. And that might be completely impossible, but maybe not. So she also went on to say, so I'm struggling with comparison for the first time, maybe because I'm on Instagram more, haha. I see studio florists like me doing online classes, tutorials, home delivery, Mother's Day, shipping flowers, etc. All I want to do is crawl back in bed and pull the covers over my head until this is over. I don't have any motivation to pivot or produce. I'd like to get my mojo back. And she said, love all your advice. You're my favorite teacher / florist for keeping it real. Thank you. I just think we can relate, right? I mean, I would totally be lying if I was like, this is not at all depressing. I am so confident about how this is going to go. So confident about how I'm going to just be one of the creme de la creme at the top when this is all over. That would be complete bullcrap. I'm not going to say that to you. I think the idea that you're not feeling like pivoting or producing is okay. But I do think it's really important to keep moving forward in your business. So even if that is one thing a week that you are doing for your marketing, and this is what I'm doing in my Patreon training group for anybody who's not there yet. If you're like, I don't want to pivot, I don't want to produce, just join my really affordable training. You can join for as little as $3, or you can get way more stuff and join for $29 a month. There's some tiers in between that as well. But I'm not really doing a whole pitch on it right now. So go to patreon.com/realflowerbusiness if you want to see what those options are. But moving forward with little steps, things that keep you in touch with your audience, that help you do a foundation now, foundational stuff, mindset, marketing. These are the foundations that will get you through this to the end, right? So when I say, well, I'm not all that confident, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to like be, rising above at the end of this thing, I'll tell you this, I am doing everything possible so that will be my fate, right? So that will be the truth, because I'm not relying on the fates to make that happen. I am designing it. I am creating it myself. So whether it is through showing up here weekly with you guys, or making sure I'm blogging and putting stuff out there, or being on Pinterest, or using Instagram or IGTV. Like that's my tutorial this week in Patreon is like, if you have not used IGTV, just show you how to do it. Easy stuff that you can do and learn right now. You don't have to be inspired. You don't have to learn to speak another language. You don't have to be your most fit self of your life. Although if you're eating as much chocolate as I have for the past 2 weeks, maybe you should consider changing your tune and cooling it with the sweets. But that's my message to myself. So just, it's okay to not want to pivot or produce, to want to like hide a little bit, to feel real sad even, right? Like that's okay. This is pretty sad. It's pretty sad, the idea that you're not going to be doing weddings, that you're not going to have events, that you have to handle just the hassle of the inquiries coming in of like, what should I do? Can I postpone? It's stressful. It's a lot. So, and then it's a lot to keep track of, right? And we should talk about that another time, but like how do you actually make the postponements smoother on your end? That's a really important thing. All right, let's see. I see a couple of things coming through here. That reaction is 100% valid. Nobody knows what's going to happen or when. I so relate to the last comment or question. It's a daily battle. It is. And that's why I kind of wanted to make that first, because I think it's just, we can relate to that so much. If you can't relate to that, you're a superhuman person. I just focus on learning and on blog, website, and social media development right now, just finding my voice and where I want to be. Yeah, that's what I highly suggest. it's hard to find a voice when things are so weird like this, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to say something of meaning instead of just talking to talk, right? Just showing up on Instagram because people tell you you should do that. You can create more meaningful connections right now. I lost a comment here. Good morning. What kind of lawyer does one need to see and hire who has a floral studio? I would think it's some kind of lawyer who knows services very well, right? Thank you, Allison. This would be a small business lawyer. So you'll just go to anybody you can look in the phone book, you can ask another business that you might be friends with in your area, who's your local attorney. And you don't need a lawyer until you need one, right? You don't need a lawyer until you need a lawyer. So it's really great to right now reach out and make a connection, have them review your contract. It's going to cost you money, right? So, but spend the money. Do you want to spend the money for peace of mind? That's part of this trade-off here. Again, it's like you spend the money in exchange for services. You will give them money. They will give you peace of mind. Kind of a good deal. So next question. I have a couple moving forward with a May 30th wedding in Wisconsin, which our stay-at-home extends to May 26th. So their stay-at-home order is in place until 4 days before this wedding. Small wedding in private land, 7 bridesmaids bouquets ordered. I'm afraid that after I order flowers, they may have to cut back. The question is, should I have them sign a new contract stating no changes after X date? So I say a big fat yes to that. If they think they're moving forward with a May 30th wedding right now, God bless them. If they're really truly having like the 10 people or whatever will be allowed at that point, you got the 7 bridesmaids. That's barely enough room for the groom in there. So whatever they decide to do at this point, I would definitely give them a hard deadline for when you need to know. I would tell them what day you're going to order the flowers, and I would lie to them. Now, I know I am all about being honest, but I would lie to my customers and tell them I need the day, like I need 3 more days. You know what I mean? Like if I have to order on a Wednesday, I would tell them I need to know by Sunday of that week, just so that if and when they decide that they're dragging their feet, I'm not actually in trouble in terms of getting the flowers, okay? So I want to give myself a buffer for them to be a little bit flaky. So if I say to them, I need to know by Sunday of whatever week it is, I mean, probably of next week, right? I need to know by Sunday of next week if you are going to move forward. And if you choose, and then I will order your flowers. If I order your flowers and you then decide to cancel, here is what I propose. And then get creative with your solution. You can have all the flowers unarranged and you can do something with them. Or you can, pay me in full and I will make all your arrangements and bring them to your house and you can still have them. Or you can cancel and forfeit X amount of dollars, right? And I would talk to my wholesaler. Like I would just get all the information about what is actually the latest I can order for a May 30th wedding. What is their policy if my customer cancels, right? I would want to know all of that up front. And then just present it to them so that they know, so they understand the new risk they're taking, because it's not your old contract really that you're functioning under anymore. You're giving them a new deadline, a new set of terms for what happens if, because it's no longer force majeure. It's no longer unforeseeable, right? That's the other thing about force majeure moving forward. It's things you couldn't predict. Right now, you can predict that May 30th is a sketchy date to be trying to actually pull this thing off with 7 bridesmaids, because 7 bridesmaids plus a bride plus a groom plus an officiant is 10 people. So I don't know exactly what your order is there in Wisconsin, but where mom and dad can't come, there's no, right? So they really may realize that they have to scale this thing back. All right. So then she goes on to say, I'm struggling with the uncertainties of couples pushing spring weddings to fall. Like, will that even be a possibility, or should all get pushed to 2021? So I posted about this last week on my blog, floralartvt.com. That's my wedding business end of my blog, or rather my wedding business blog. I have two blogs, two businesses. So over there, and I shared it here in the group, I can share it again. I am straight up telling people that if they're getting married in 2020, they should plan for not more than 50 guests right now. If they're not okay with that small of a wedding, they should postpone to 2021. My customers have been replying to me with real, genuine, heartfelt thanks for my honesty, because people are not shooting them straight on this so far. People are saying, hold on, or maybe, or you can wait, or let's see. And then when they hear from me, honey, I don't think so. I think you better, wrap your head around like 50 max with social distancing. By the way, okay, 50 max, including staff, with 6 feet between everybody, and masks and all the things. Not sexy, not like the dream romantic wedding. So they gotta wrap their head around all of that and be like, I'm cool with that, for you to move forward feeling like maybe this is going to happen in 2020. So I want you to leave this chat feeling like, in your heart, that anybody who is scheduled for 2020 might have to cancel with you. If somebody's postponing to later in 2020, it might get canceled or postponed again. So how much work are you going to do for them? How many revisions are you going to do for them? And what is your new term going to be with them? Your new amendment going to be with this customer, that if they need to cancel their October wedding, you need to know by what date. And now, since we've already changed plans, how much of the deposit are you definitely keeping, or of their total payments so far are you keeping? What is your offer? Make them an offer. All right, see, a comment came through here. I had a lawyer go over my contract last week. Totally worth it. Oh, good. Yes. Peace of mind. You can't put a price on it. So, all right, next question. Everything is postponed here till at least September. Australian wedding florist, she wrote. I'm getting a very few inquiries to quote for next year, and getting ghosted and or pushback on price more than usual. I usually get a little pushback from the not my clients, but with all the uncertainty, I'm getting no luck at all. Okay, so this is going to be, I think, something where a lot of us are dealing with. First of all, it's a little bit of a strange time to be making future plans. I think it's great if you're getting 2021 inquiries, like raise the roof, be proud. But it's a little bit of a strange time. Just financially, people are feeling unsure. It depends on what country they're coming from. I know in Australia, you get a lot of destination clients. I'm in Vermont. I get a lot of destination clients. So I know that feeling. It's like, it's not just like, well, if they book and we don't move forward, we could just do another event. They're not coming here. It's all over, right? So they want to be sure. They want to be really, really sure. And I think it's okay if people are feeling a little sketch right now about, should they move forward? Should they not? Can they really spend this much? Can they not? I think we just have to sort of be prepared for that. So if you know for a fact that this is not the way that people normally do business with you, I would just want to keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on each person moving forward that's coming through, and who's a yes, who's a no, who's ghosting. Were they already that not ideal client that in a normal time you would have just, brushed it right off, like they're just not my client? Or is there this undercurrent now happening that is changing people's perception? And the truth is, I think that there will be a change in how much people are spending. People are going to start planning smaller weddings because they may not be sure if they can have 150 guests. So maybe if I plan for 100, if I have to scale it back to 50, it's at least I'm not cutting 100 people out of my list. I think it's going to be a little bit touch and go here for a little while. So I don't want to say I wouldn't get too worried just yet, because I don't ever think it's too soon to be paying super close attention to the patterns when they change in your business. When there's a pattern that changes, like you don't usually get ghosted and now you are, sometimes it's you, right? Sometimes there's something you're doing that's allowing that client to slip away. And then you can correct that, right? If it's something you're doing, you can fix it. Again, that's what my Patreon training is all about. Like, how do you book clients consistently? Well, you follow these steps that I teach you very consistently, and you will book the clients, right? But if you miss those steps, you miss the client. Now, if it's not something you're doing, not easy to fix, right? If there's something going on where everyone's just feeling like, I don't know if I should travel to Australia next year. I don't know if it's safe to get on a plane, right? I don't know if my guests are going to be up for this. They're going to be a little more shy about moving forward. So it's not to say that you shouldn't worry just yet. I really, really, really don't want to be like, just relax, honey. It'll be fine. I just want you to make sure you're paying attention to, is it something that you can fix, or is it something that's happening that you're going to have to just sort of ride the wave or get pulled by the wave and see what happens? She goes on to say she's struggling with, should I drop my prices / discount to get them over the line? I've already lowered my 50% booking fee to 30%. I think that's smart, by the way. We have to think about how we're going to adjust that initial. What you're going to find is everyone's going to want to know what your postponement plan is from now on, right? What if I have to postpone? What if I have to cancel? So let's have an answer to that. And if part of your answer is, I'll take less money from you upfront than I normally would, that's a good answer, right? That's a reasonable answer. You know, in the past, we always asked for 50%, but under the current circumstances, I understand, you know, how customers are feeling. We're now doing a 30% deposit. Now, here's the thing. When you're doing something like that for a client, make sure they know about it, okay? So if you normally take 50, now you're asking for 30, instead of just presenting it at 30 for your new clients, why not explain to them? Our normal policy is that we take 50%. However, because we understand how people are feeling right now, and we're very sensitive to that, we've lowered it to 30% so that it feels more reasonable to them. They'll be like, wow, that you see me, right? So I would just make sure I'm presenting that. So then she says, and I've extended my 7-day hold and quote validity for a few strong leads as well. I think that's super smart. She goes, I'm sorry if this doesn't fit exactly, but I don't have anyone else to ask, and I'm freaking out with no income. So I hesitate to say, raise your hand if you are freaking out with no income, because I think it'll just be but yeah, yes, just yes. So I think it's smart to reduce your initial ask on the deposit, holding the date for longer for people that you think will get to the yes if they just know that you're there for them. I think that's also very smart. And I do that all the time. If I always put an expiration date on a quote, but if the expiration date is coming and they're like, hey, I'm still waiting on a quote from somebody else, I can decide if I really like them, I can be generous and say, sure, I'll give you 3 more days, or I'll give you 5 more days, or I'll give you another week, whatever. But I don't have to. But if I want to extend that courtesy and show them how reasonable I am and how confident I am that even after they get another proposal, they're going to want to book with me, you bet I'll hold that I'll allow that contract to still be valid. And most especially if it's somebody that I like. All right, let's see. I see more comments coming through here. All right, I heard from a local venue this weekend that they are literally saying nothing and leaving couples in the dark because communicating with clients about the current situation is a huge liability if they say anything at all, which I think, legal or not, it feels super shitty to me. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think venues are in a really specifically tight spot right now. I mean, I shouldn't say that like I put them on a pedestal above us or something like that, but I think it's particularly tricky because they take on liability if somebody becomes ill at one of their events, right? And wedding planners too, they fall in this category of like, well, if I tell them to cancel and they're out all this money, right? Like I could be advising them the wrong thing. I think at this point, it's almost insane to think that advising someone to postpone is bad advice, right? Advising somebody to wait till 2021, it's hard to think that that's bad advice. Waiting until 8 weeks before your wedding to decide, I think, is arguably worse advice than let's just read the writing on the wall right now that we cannot gather without social distancing for a while, and that will be less than ideal for your wedding. And so let's just choose now that you say no to a small social distancing wedding, or you say yes to that, but don't hold out hope for a big wedding in 2020 because it's just not going to happen. Okay. And I do think it's unfortunate that they're not communicating. I have my own sort of questions and wondering about some of our local venues here in Vermont. Like, how are they handling this? What are they doing? For example, you can't book a hotel room here in Vermont until June 15th or after. So even though I wrote to my customers a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, you're getting married on June 15th. I actually have one on June 15th. You're getting married on June 15th or before, you can't book a hotel. So their venues, I think, have told them like it's off. They didn't necessarily cancel. So again, when you're thinking about falling back on your contract, the customer's not canceling necessarily. It's their event is being canceled. Okay. We are all experiencing this. Okay. So hopefully I answered that one satisfactorily. The dropping the prices piece. Okay. I don't know if you should drop your prices. I'm not necessarily on board with the idea of raising prices or reducing prices just yet, because I don't think we really know what the climate is, what people's threshold is. So you should know what you charge, right? What do you charge for bouquets? What do you charge for centerpieces? What's your average? What's the lowest you go? What's your luxury? Have your own parameters. And as you move forward, quote the way you have been, and see what happens. If every single quote you're sending out gets ghosted, maybe people aren't willing to spend. Again, I always ask, if you're really not sure, and this is an important time to do market research, to get inside the head of your customers. I hadn't heard from you, and I understand it's a weird, tricky time right now. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind filling out this quick 2-question survey to just let me know the status of your wedding planning, or why you maybe didn't pick me, or whatever. And just ask them, did they pick another florist, or are they in a holding pattern? And why not give them an open-ended question where they can reply with their feelings? Well, I really wanted to book with you, but this and this, and your price was like, $1,000 more than this other florist, and blah, 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 blah. Let them tell you so you can get that information. And it takes about 3 minutes to make a Google form or a SurveyMonkey survey, and just send it to those people and try to get a sense. This is the time to get in touch with what's going on with your customers, for sure. All right, moving on. Excuse me. All right, I have a bride who, by the way, is in the wedding business, which is why I'm doing this anonymously. So her wedding was to be March 28th. So would have already happened. She has paid in full, but the wedding was postponed. So the florist has all the money, but the wedding hasn't happened yet. She manages the venue. Up until last week, they had not rescheduled because they weren't ready. They are moving to another state and now want to possibly cancel and get her money back, or use for other credit. Not sure what credit because she's moving. Very frustrating because I went to the venue. She wanted so much. I have made several revisions, just don't know how to respond. All right, so this is a great example of getting super creative. So I think it's very reasonable to offer a credit to clients if they have paid you. Again, it's going to depend how much they've paid you, but if, like you're saying, if she's moved away, I don't know, maybe it's hard to do that. But if she's asking for that, that is a win for you. She's saying, I don't need you to give me my money back necessarily, as long as I can spend this money with you at another time. So if you're okay with that, if you're like, yeah, I'll keep your money, and sure, I'll do flowers for, maybe it turns into a bunch of things. Maybe it's, a baby shower for a friend or a birthday for this. Like it's gonna, you're gonna have to be clear about, okay, well, what would those services look like? Would it be one event? Would it be multiple events? Like, are you gonna be having like a little index card next to your computer that's like, Mary Jo moved, has credit of $5,000, and then you just tick off sent flowers to Aunt Mary, minus $100, right? Like what are you really willing to do? How would that actually work? Is there a certain amount of that goes to cover the time you already invested, and then this is how much she has for credit? Would you give her a partial refund? So that's going to depend on you, yourself, your heart, your brain. This is not your heart, it's your brain, but they're so connected for me right now that it's all one. Whatever it is that you need to do to feel like you're doing the right thing. I don't think it's unreasonable to offer her a partial refund. I don't think it's unreasonable to take her up on her offer to just allow you to give her credit. For me, I don't necessarily want to have like a $3,000 or $5,000 credit just hanging out there. Because what is it for? What exactly is it for? Does that mean that whatever day you pick, I have to do it? Because if you pick that one day next year that I'm super already booked, like I can't deliver baby flowers or any of that on that day next year. So anyway, just define what that means. But I think if she's asking for credit, not only refund, like she is showing herself to be reasonable. Okay. All right. So she says she's struggling with how to move forward with 40 weddings now postponed. We now have an October and November wedding postponing. So I don't know the answer to that, because that's where we all are, right? I am anticipating everything postponing. If it doesn't postpone, it'll be way scaled back. So in a weird way, postponing is almost better, right? Because it's better to make more money later than very little money now, depending on where you are in your business. So I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend like I know how we move forward through this with 40 weddings postponed. That's a lot of weddings for anybody to do, right? And I know some people do 100 weddings, but that's a lot of people, again, to keep track of, to move forward, to scooch dates for. I mean, maybe those weddings don't even all have dates, I would almost bet, right? Like they know they're postponed, but they don't have a date yet. It's just going to be tricky. So just know that I'm with you. I'm with you on the how to move forward with all these things postponed. It's going to mean, this is a huge wake-up call for those of us who have been like, we're event focused, we're boutique, we're, so niche, baby, right? This is where the retail florists have got us licked, right? Because they can do other things. They have a machine. They know they do it. They've been doing this. They serve the community. We only serve the weddings. And so we didn't diversify. Bottom line, didn't diversify. And now we've learned. We could never have anticipated, right? Maybe we could have, I don't know, but I didn't. I did not anticipate. All right, here's another question I have. I have agreed to reschedule 4 wedding dates, but how do I handle not knowing if my cost will be increased due to COVID, and how do I negotiate that with my current clients? So the way that I'm going to approach it is just wait and see. So that may not be the most popular answer. I don't know. But the truth is, I don't know what's available, what's not available, how much it's going to cost. Is it going to be a huge increase or a small increase? I would personally be willing to make a slightly smaller margin if I can at least come pretty close, right? If I can get pretty close with my pricing. If it's way vastly different, if it's the difference between like, I literally cannot even come close to fulfilling your order with this price versus I can do that. It's just going to have like one less rose per centerpiece, right? Like, what are we really talking about here in terms of the difference? And then I would just have a very clear conversation with each person about that. For your wedding, here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that roses in these colors are harder to get, and we don't know the answers to that yet. Like, we won't really see the consequences of all of this, destruction in our industry until we're trying to order those flowers maybe in 2021. Maybe we'll see it in the next few weeks, right, in your prices, but it might take longer for that to come up. So it just may be a tricky conversation to have whenever you're going to have it, but I'd rather come to them with actual facts about what the change is than just simply put a blanket out there of like, well, the price might go up, but I don't really know how much, and I don't know when, and I'm not sure when I'll know, that's just something to keep in mind. I don't necessarily want to do that. Just sort of brace for impact, but I don't know how big the impact is going to be. I'd rather wait and address it in the fully informed sort of a way. All right, so I have one more question here. If you have a question for me, please feel free to answer in the comments box. No, otherwise I'm going to just hop on to this last question that I got. I don't see any other questions right now, but again, now is your time. All right, so here's the last one that I pulled from my anonymous form. A bride called to say that if she has to reschedule her wedding a second time due to COVID, she's going to simply have a small family dinner / gathering, and was asking for a partial refund. Her design is minimal, and I explained that I could take the same amount of material and make it fuller and lush, but she simply doesn't want a luxurious wedding in an economically stressful time. She works as a nurse and is on the front line of caring and treating COVID patients. Her rescheduled wedding date is mid-October 2020. I offered a creative solution if the October date can't happen due to state restrictions. I offered using the budget for a special family occasion like a baby shower, birthday, holiday gathering, or if she has the smaller version of her wedding, to do the same, repurposing the remaining budget for the special occasion. I said the difficult words, no refunds. I offered a creative solution. I just wanted to share and ask if you had any other suggestions. This weekend, I had another bride thinking she wants to change her wedding into a small / micro wedding with the micro trend planners, which the micro plan trenders are encouraging. Again, I'm holding to my contract, which couldn't be clearer. No refunds. Thoughts? All right. I think my beginning of my chat really addresses this, but I'll say it one more time. Your contract might say no refunds, but it still probably doesn't actually 100% encompass all of the things that are happening right now, right? Because it may say no refunds, it may have a cancellation policy, but it may not really say what happens to your deposit, to future payments, to, being paid in full. It just may not explain all of those things. So I really want you to just, I appreciate that cozy, good feeling that my contract couldn't be clearer, right? But I will argue, I bet your contract could be clearer. And by that, I mean, we could never have expected this. And so it's not clearer because we couldn't have, right? But in terms of what's happening right now, it's possible that your contract isn't as clear as you are thinking that it is. And, for anybody who's out there going, I won't be refunding, they are not telling you the truth. They just haven't refunded yet. They haven't been challenged yet. They haven't had that super fiery customer whose uncle is a high-end lawyer somewhere, right? Or they're in law school and they're ready to fight this thing with you. Once you have somebody who's willing to push, that's when you'll know whether your contract protects you and is totally clear, right? I don't want to find out. Okay. Maybe some of you like to live dangerous. You want to find out. You're like, no refunds. Forget about it. My contract couldn't be clearer. But you may find out, if you don't know now, that you weren't actually covered for this, or that this term here actually contradicts this term here. And so, we have a little bit of a problem here because it's not clear which thing we're following, right? Now, that said, I understand her situation. She's saying she's rescheduling. I'm offering her solutions. Here's my thing. This girl's a nurse, y'all. Like, she's a nurse. She's on the front line. You said she's on the front line, right? You didn't say, she's just living her best life. She gets to leave the house and go to work. You're like, front lines. Front lines means she's a fighter, right? So I think we should show special consideration to those people right now. I think those people are especially stressed right now, and they're asked to do stuff that they should not be asked to do, right? They are doing things that they should not have to do. So if you are leading with your heart on this, I personally would make an exception for my nurse client who is working right now. I would come up with something that works for me, and I would come up with something that sounds reasonable to her. Now, what I'm doing doesn't have to be what you're doing, right? But that is how I would approach it. If somebody is a nurse right now, they deserve special treatment, okay? And this is maybe the only way that you can give her that sort of peace of mind and special treatment. So for me, it might be, okay, well, you're moving to 2020 in October. There's still a really good chance it's only going to be 50. And so if that's what you're going to do, let's plan for this. Let's plan for us to have a minimum of this or a maximum budget of this. And this is how we'll proceed. And I just need to know by this date, just like I said before with the other person, if you need to reschedule something, if you're afraid they're going to cancel last minute, just get creative with your new terms. I need to know by this date if the October wedding's going forward, and this and this and this. This is what's going to happen. Or like you said, if you want to give them a credit, if they're okay with that, then that's a great solution. If they don't want that credit, then it's doesn't do me any good, right? It's like, well, I'll give you a credit for this. Yeah, but I don't want that. Then even though it seems like a reasonable solution, if they don't want it, they don't have to say yes to it, right? So probably, do I think a nurse is going to come try and sue you or whatever? I don't know, right? Her dad could be a lawyer. I don't know. But whether she's coming for you or not shouldn't be the only thing that informs this decision for you, I think. So how do you think a nurse should be treated who is hoping to get married this year in October, who may not be able to do it and may have to way super duper scale back? How should a nurse who's your customer be treated? Not just how should anybody be treated, not what does your contract say? How should this customer be treated? That would be the way I would put it. She said, I'm struggling with, I don't think clients read their contract. I know they don't. I say that all the time. Presume that your client has not read your contract always. And that's why you want to always put the most important parts of your contract in front of them outside of the contract. That's why my invoice is where I tell them what the minimum spend is, when the final payment is due, because they don't have to read the contract to know that. I'm telling them that's the most important thing to me when I get paid. She says, I think I need to install a structure of contract signing where you initial after each section. It's not on me that a client doesn't read their contract before signing, but I'm losing my patience with clients in this regard. Yeah, they should read their contract. But again, I'm just going to reiterate the idea that your contract is protecting you. Your contract is what it is just, it may not actually be true. So just make sure you keep in mind, if you haven't brought it to a lawyer yet, if you're like, if you're like, I am sticking with it. It is no refunds and my contract is clear. Just make sure you have a lawyer read it now and say to you, yes, girl, you are right. You are correct. Keep it. You're protected. Your language is strong. The force is strong with you and your contract, right? Just do that, because I don't want people to just assume you're protected by your contract. If by chance you don't actually have everything covered in there. All right. She also went on to say, I just signed up for your flower math course. Thank you very much. And we'll be diving into it this week. I believe I bought all of your courses. LOL. I just want to do business well. Maybe client management is where I need to regroup. Also, planner management. I thought this was funny. Some planners do more harm than good, especially in all the rescheduling. It's been tough. So I bet that is a tricky thing with the rescheduling, especially if you have planners who are encouraging people to hang on. I think we have to also treat the planner like a customer, even though they're not paying us. They are part of who we are, representing our brand to. So yes, we might need to educate them on what your policy is moving forward. Well, if you want to wait, I can't guarantee a 2021 date, right? So if you wait and everyone else books, like, you're risking that for your client. Just shoot them straight. You don't have to be like, I'm educating you, but you can gently educate by like bringing them in with you, bring them into the problem with you. So what are we going to do if our client waits until 8 weeks before and 2021 is booked? Like, what are we going to do then? So maybe it becomes like you guys are together on this team. I don't know. Let's see. All right, a couple of things coming in here. If you so far have had silence from all July and August wedding clients, all were spring reschedules, would you go ahead and touch base gently? Okay. So funny you should mention this. So I am sort of in a similar situation. I even still have June silence on one of my customers. I think it's a really, really tricky time for people. And so this is a perfect time for you to create your own policy. Maybe it's the 8-week policy, right? Maybe it's the 8 weeks before I am going to check in and give a nudge. Maybe it's 6 weeks before. I don't know. For me right now, I'm at this point of like next week. Actually, it should be yesterday, frankly. I'm contacting my last June bride that I haven't heard from yet, because it's time for her to decide what she's going to do. And she may not like it. And I reached out to her once before and she was like, no, we're sending out invitations this weekend. And I was like, for reals, yo. So, some people, it's just harder for them to accept what's happening. I can't say that I would have been like super reasonable if when I was planning my wedding, all of a sudden it was like, you might have to cancel. I might have held on. I really might have. I don't know. I could pretend like I was always, super calm and cool and reasonable, but like, you're not always. When you're planning a wedding, that was probably when I was at my like most frantic in a lot of ways. I was always thinking about planning and what should I be doing. So when all of a sudden it's like, well, you're not allowed to think about that anymore because it's off. You're like, but no, but we don't know that, right? But we don't know for sure. Like, we know for sure, right? But they don't know for sure. So I would just tread lightly is all. I would make your own policy in your mind, and then you can approach them. Hey, it's 8 weeks before your wedding. I just wanted to check in with you to say, I'm thinking about you and I'm feeling like this is getting to the point where it's probably obvious that we're going to have a smaller wedding. What are your thoughts? I'm happy to discuss this with you. Like, invite the conversation, invite them to share their what's going on, right? Because what might be happening is that they're having like struggles with their venue. Their venue may be not replying, right? They may be getting no communication at all. So it may not be the client, it may be a situation that they're in, right? So just keep that in mind. And then the other thing, which should not be overlooked, but they could be ill. They could have a family member who's ill. This is just not a time to just assume people are like, just flighty. They could legit be sick. They could. So yeah, there's that. That was a bummer. That was a bummer saying that out loud, but it's true. All right. Somebody says, I had a mom threaten with a lawyer over a $300 deposit. Ugh, yeah. It's tough. And, I've been saying this for many, many years now, but it's sort of like the smaller the money, the harder they fight sometimes because it feels somehow more precious. That little bit of money feels like a big win for them. I'm sorry, that's a tricky thing. I wonder what you ended up deciding to do there. Somebody else says, last week my lawyer said I would have to justify the amount of deposit kept. Yes, okay. So I appreciate you saying that. I think that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind. Some people are taking like a 50% deposit, right? Like my Australian florist who asked that question, she went from a 50% deposit to 30%. So you're going to have to be able to, again, just the heart and mind connection. Why do you deserve that 50%? It's not from lost income. These people aren't doing this to you, right? They're not choosing. If you were like truth serum, right? Give your customers a truth serum. Are you canceling your wedding because you don't want to get married? Or are you canceling your wedding because you have absolutely no choice, right? They're going to, I have no choice. I want to get married, right? So if you're taking your truth serum, right, why are they canceling? Are they canceling because they think like you're not worth it? Or are they canceling because literally they're so screwed right now, right? they can't make a right decision if they try, right? They try to postpone to 2020, might not work out. Try to postpone it to 2021, might not get a venue. Price might be up, blah, 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 right? All the things. So they are dealing with that stress as well. Plus, like that general malaise and stress that you feel, your customer feels that too, right? Your customer's mom feels that too. Your customer's parents feel that too. There's everybody around them is feeling that too. And it's a lot. It's hard to act reasonably when you don't feel like yourself, right? So yeah, I appreciate that. The idea that you might have to justify why you're keeping that amount. And it can't just be because the contract says. You can tell yourself that, but let's come up with a better reason, right? Let's come up with something more genuine than just, the contract says that. All right, somebody else says, thank you, Alison. It's such a delicate balance, but so much harder to do our best for them in the unknown. It really is. And that's why, in a weird way, I just want to make sure people are on the page of reality that I am on. I like to dwell in reality. And in my page that I have turned, we are not having events above 50 people this year. There is going to be 6-foot social distancing in restaurants, under your tent, in your venue. This is not going to be the wedding that they planned. So even if they are trying to postpone or whatever, you need to know for you, okay? You don't have to write your customer right now, like, hey, here's what the story is, right? But for you, know the story, okay? Know that the story is that our businesses are taking tremendous hit this year. If you put all your eggs in the wedding and event basket, right? We are getting hit real hard. And even if you have other income, even if you might have a second job, you might also grow flowers, you might have a shop where you actually are doing tons of business right now. Luckily, there are some people who are like, I'm super busy. That's so great. I am truly happy for any florist out there who is busy right now. I am truly and genuinely happy for you right now. You are giving everybody hope when you chime in with your little braggadocio, like, I booked this, I booked that. I am psyched for you. So keep those things coming in. I'd love to see when you're like, I booked this, I had a success here. It is really encouraging for everybody to hear and see those sorts of messages right now. But it would be absolutely insane to act like this is just going to be easy, that giving back deposits is going to be an easy choice. It's going to be a hard choice every time, right? It's going to be a hard choice whether you're telling them no refunds. That's hard, right? And it's going to be, if it wasn't, you guys wouldn't be writing like, why are people doing this? Why are people refund happy? It's because it's hard for you to say no refund, right? If it was easy for you, you would just be like, oh, they're so silly, right? Oh, they don't need to do that. But you know that you might need to, right? You know deep down that at some point your luck is going to run out and somebody is going to say, I'm going to sue you, right? Maybe they won't, but they're going to say it. So you got to be ready for that, for unreasonableness. Okay, one more. Bramble and Blossom. Thoughts on rescheduling for a second time, a third. I want to be empathetic and kind. I want to be a good business owner. How many reschedules for one client is too many? Should we just be saying no more 2020 dates unless they are fewer than 50 guests? So yeah, I mean, the short answer for me is yeah, like that is the page I am on. I would not book a 100-person wedding for 2020 right now. It is not reasonable to expect that, okay? In terms of how many times to reschedule, that's got to be between you and the client. I talked a little bit about that a couple of questions ago. But basically you want to define, like, if this gets postponed again, what happens? And that's why I think it's just smarter to push to 2021 right now. That's just the truth. And put it this way, like big companies like Facebook and in Canada, right? I don't know if it's all of Canada or if it's just like in Vancouver, but there's like you're not having large events this year. Nobody over 50 people. Facebook and Microsoft are like, no meetings above 50 people through June of 2021. So, not that we should look to Facebook for all the answers in life, right? But these are people who are going to be thinking in a way that helps lead, okay? And if you are lacking leadership in your state or your country, hello, United States, if you are missing leadership around what is truly the right thing to do, how big is it okay to gather, right? Should you be wearing a mask, right? Then you need to just be smart and you need to plan for the worst case scenario of no events or people with, 50 or fewer people at your event. That's it. And I've said this several times. I said it in a local wedding group here. All you need in your area is one wedding to be a super spreader event, right? Where a whole bunch of people get sick and everything changes in your area, okay? And I'm not saying this to be doom and gloom, but just for reals, if somebody has a small wedding and then literally 100 people in your town are sick 2 weeks later, it's going to not be too hard to figure out how that happened, right? So people are going to figure out, how did you get sick? Where were you? I was at this wedding. Oh, and you were at this wedding, and you were at this wedding, and you were at this wedding. And then each of these people, right? So we may have tighter restrictions coming up in 2020 than we even anticipate right now, okay? With peace and love, I break this news. All right, last one, and then I'm going to let you go. I'm sorry I kept it so long today, but I just knew this was just a big topic to tackle. I went from a 35% deposit to a $200 deposit. Crazy town, right? I want to feel good that I can give that back. To me, it's pennies, but the client, $200 might be a lot of money. Or perhaps it's an amount they can be okay losing, considering other vendors are taking huge deposits and the risk of not getting it back is bigger. I just want to be reasonable and let my clients know that I really do have their best interest in mind. Even if that means I'm putting my own livelihood at risk, I am really okay with it. That's the tricky thing. It's a really tricky thing. I think 200 is quite low, but if you're comfortable with that, then you do it. I do a $700 deposit. The reason I do that is, if it's a bigger wedding, I'll take a bigger deposit. But, for an average wedding, I'm comfortable keeping that amount if you're canceling your event. If it's a higher amount, I'm not comfortable keeping more unless I actually did work. Like if I went on site, if I revised proposals, if we had multiple meetings, right? Then yeah, I did work, right? But if I didn't do work, and again, that's what I teach you in my Patreon training, how I do very little work to book clients. Very little work. There is very little work that I do before they give me that deposit. So I don't have to feel like I'm entitled to this. And, I can calculate how much time I spent. I can justify keeping all of it. I can justify keeping a portion of it. So, whatever it is, I think it should be a big enough deposit that they're not willing to just leave it and just be like, yeah, you know what? It's only $200. I'll just book another florist. But also something that you're comfortable keeping. So if you're feeling like 200 is good for you right now, then I support this message. Bramble and Blossom says, thanks, Alison. You're welcome. And as a new business owner, this has been so helpful as I'm already feeling around in the dark sometimes. Much love and appreciation. You're so welcome. I can only imagine this must be really hard on new people. I hadn't really thought about like truly the way that this would just feel like absolutely I have no idea where to begin with this. But just know that whether you're new or you're not new, this is new for all of us. And that's why, again, just want to end with the idea no one's contract has been tested yet in a court of law about whether your force majeure covers this pandemic, right? No one has been tested yet about whether you can keep a deposit when events aren't even allowed in your state, right? You may not be able to claim it as like, lost income because arguably you could not book that date with anybody, right? So just please check with your lawyers if you're feeling like your contract is the thing you want to hide behind. And I don't mean that in a crap way. It sounds a little judgy, but I mean, if you want to hold up your contract as the reason why you can't change terms, just make sure that's actually true, that your lawyer says, yeah, I would go to court with you, right? Or if you had to go to small claims court, I believe a judge would side with you, or at least you have a chance versus a lawyer looking at it and going, well, here's the problem. You got a big hole here because this isn't defined. I think you'd be wise to refund a portion or to make a reasonable offer. So I am not your lawyer, but you should have one at this point if you do not, okay? And yes, it's gonna cost you money. So I don't know how much money it's gonna cost you. It could cost you $300, it could cost you $500. And maybe you have a couple of vendors in your area who already have a lawyer where you guys can kind of pool resources and ask some questions. I feel like that was a suggestion in my group as well, which I thought was very smart. Because a lot of us are in this together and have very similar questions, right? Like whether you're a venue or a photographer or a florist, you may have some similar questions that perhaps you could get answered. She says, thank you, I'm new and I feel like it's a lot easier. I have lost less. Yeah, it's so true. It's almost unfathomable after 18 years in business to think of what this year really looks like. From everything, from there being no summer camp to having my son here, nonstop, we're homeschooling all through summer, and then does school start in September? I don't know, right? I don't know. So it's a lot. It's just a lot for all of us. So it's confusing. That's just really all there is to it. So get the best advice you can and, act from your head and your heart feeling aligned so that you can feel like if a customer comes back, it is unreasonable and bans you or bashes you or threatens to sue you, you at least feel like everything you did with the best of intentions, and you did acting in a way that had your clients in mind and your business in mind. It shouldn't necessarily be like, hey, I'll do anything for my client and I don't care if my business goes under, but you may do everything to keep those deposits and your business still might not be cash liquid enough, right? You may not have that cash flow habit that keeps you in business till next year. And finally, just a final little piece here is just, it's okay to take another job this year, to do something else, to generate income in any way that you have to bridge this year into next year, okay? That is okay. There is no law that says you have to not work and sit home and just be missing out on your business, just be missing out on weddings, just be focused on booking 2021. You can do whatever you have to do to get creative, to get resourceful, and to make a living in your life, okay? And you have talents and you have business savvy and you got the goods, right? Like you can do something that helps you pick yourself up. I know that you can. Even if it doesn't feel like it right now, maybe in an hour it'll feel like that. Maybe in a week it'll feel like that. But at some point, right? Like it's the time to just be like, here's what I'm doing. And here is the action I'm going to take to make sure that I survive till next year. You don't have to live off of deposits that you don't feel comfortable keeping, right? You can take another job. And if you are comfortable keeping the deposits and you're like, I did the work and I'm confident with this, or I'm making my best efforts, then own that and be okay with it, right? Just be okay with whatever you choose. All right, I'm stopping here. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Keep moving forward. Keep doing beautiful work. You'll find lots of resources on my website at realflowerbusiness.com if you haven't been there. So if you need something to do, a free course, you can sign up for one of my paid courses. You can sign up for Patreon. There's all kinds of stuff to keep you in the game, okay? So head over to realflowerbusiness.com anytime. It's there 24 hours a day. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week. Oh, almost forgot. I got to tease next week. I got a special guest coming in next week. I have got Phoebe coming in. If anybody knows Phoebe from Pop with Phoebe, she's the best at lots of things. She's great at sales. And what she's really great at is running pop-up shops. Now you can't really do a pop-up shop, right? Because the places are closed. So she's got a whole new virtual way of selling to clients that I am so excited for her to introduce to you guys next week. So tune in next week, 11 a.m. Eastern time. The Phoebe will be here. All right. I'm so excited. All right. See you next week.